When Maya, a brave native woman, is paid for as a wife, she believes her fate is sealed. But Daniel, the rugged ranch cowboy, not only upholds the law, he also awakens something unexpected between them. Amid dangerous adventures, secrets from the past, and a wild west that spares no one, an intense romance emerges that will change their lives forever, weaving courage, passion, and destiny into every step. The first thing Daniel Thorne noticed under the white blanket was a bare wrist, reddened from the rope. A stubborn pulse insisting on living while the rest of the body seemed to have surrendered to the merciless desert. The summer heat lay heavy over Tombstone, Arizona, a heat that wore out the morning before it had even begun. Daniel was 48 and had learned to keep his world small so that pain would have nowhere to stay. His ranch was far enough from town that problems got lost along the way. That day, however, the problem did not arrive on horseback. It arrived abandoned on a twisted wagon at the edge of his fence. One wheel was sunk in the dust. There was no driver and no recent tracks, only a mule tied up, chewing slowly as if it had been waiting all night. This was not neglect, it was intentional. The tarp was gone. In its place, a white blanket was stretched carefully, as if someone wanted to hide something from the sun. Daniel remained still, his coffee cooling in his hand as he listened. There were no birds or wind, only the faint creak of leather, and, under the blanket, a weak, almost non-existent breath. Daniel knew then that this was not ordinary merchandise nor a wounded animal. In the knot of the rope he found a note, cheap paper, firm ink. 2 words stood out like a verdict: paid, delivered, without signature, without explanation. Only a blurry stamp and a dark stain at the edge. Daniel hadn't asked for anything, hadn't paid anyone. Since burying his wife, he had shut his life off from the world. He clenched his jaw and lifted the blanket with careful restraint. There was Alicia, a young woman curled as if she had tried to disappear. Her hair was matted with dust, her lips chapped, her cheeks marked by blows the size of a hand. Her wrists were carelessly bound, with knots made for things, not for people. Her eyes opened slowly and locked on Daniel with a resignation that hurt to see. In her mind, he was the end of the road, the buyer, the owner. Her lips moved with effort, her voice broke but was clear. "You paid for me, now do it." Daniel didn't blink, didn't step back. He understood all too well. He leaned in slightly, speaking low, with controlled firmness. "I did not buy you, and I do not take anything that isn't a freely given." Her eyes did not soften. They hardened. That was worse. Then she whispered, her chin trembling. "Don't give me back. Do something." Daniel drew his small knife. He cut the rope carefully, avoiding her skin. When the knots came loose, she didn't touch him. She protected her chest, as if still expecting the next blow. Daniel lifted her in his arms and carried her to the cabin as if nothing else mattered. He set her in the back room, brought her water, and stepped back, giving her space to breathe. She watched him, like one watches a loaded weapon. Daniel returned to the wagon and examined it like one studies a storm. The tracks were not normal. Someone had pushed it there. Under the wood of the gate was a faint mark pressed hard. It wasn't a name, but a simple symbol. Daniel felt an old shiver run down his spine. He had seen that mark before. The last time it was next to a recent grave. He straightened slowly and looked toward the cabin window, where the young woman remained awake. Men who left signs like this did not offer gifts. They left warnings. Daniel inhaled deeply, and for the first time in years felt something stronger than grief. He felt resolve. If that wagon was a message, they had chosen the wrong ranch. If that woman was considered property, someone would learn what happens when a soul is treated like grain. The question was simple and dangerous. If Daniel hadn't paid for her, who had? And why leave her at his fence, as if they wanted to force him into a war? Daniel sat at the table with the note in his hand. The cabin felt smaller. In the back room, she breathed with difficulty, not touching the food, not asking for explanations. She asked for no mercy. She just listened. Under the lamp, Daniel knew someone from town was involved. He approached the door and spoke softly. "My name is Daniel." She barely looked at him. "Maya," she said after a long silence. Her name fell in the room like something fragile. Daniel nodded, knowing nothing would ever be the same. If you don't want to miss our content, hit the like button and subscribe using the button below. Also, turn on the notification bell and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We appreciate your support. Daniel placed the note on the table and felt the weight of the silence. The cabin creaked as if it were listening too. Maya stayed awake, alert to every sound, like a wounded animal that still didn't know if the shelter was real. Daniel spoke without imposing. He said he needed to go to town and would return, that he left no one behind. Maya didn't ask for promises, she just watched him, measuring the truth by the way he breathed. Before leaving, Daniel left water, bread, and a lit lantern. Then he hesitated and took back the bullets. He didn't want her to think that the only way out was violence. He wanted her to understand that there was another option. On the table he left a piece of chalk, something small, simple. A gesture saying she had control over something. Then he saddled the horse and rode toward Tombstone, the dust following him like a bad omen. The loading yard smelled of hay, sweat, and money. An employee was going over a ledger as thick as a Bible. When he saw Daniel, he forced a professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. Daniel placed the note in front of him and asked about the seal. The man feigned boredom. Daniel leaned in slightly and spoke slowly. Don't make this harder. The employee swallowed. He explained that the seal belonged to another yard, that sometimes shipments were relabeled. Daniel listened with a cold stomach. He slid a coin across the counter, not as a bribe, but as an incentive for the truth. The ledger opened. There was Daniel's legitimate payment, and below it, a second line added. Special delivery, with no description. The air seemed to thicken around both men. That wasn't added by mistake. Daniel didn't ask who did it. He already knew the answer. He asked who had signed. The employee hesitated, looking around as if the walls were listening. He mentioned a messenger with a red scarf, a man of confident words and friends in convenient places. Daniel closed the ledger and left without saying goodbye. The sun felt crueler returning to the street. He didn't go to the saloon. He went to the justice of the peace's office. The man looked up, surprised. Daniel requested a marriage certificate, not to start anything, but to stop it. The judge understood quickly. He asked if the woman would agree. Daniel replied that it only counted if it was her decision, that he sought to protect her, not possess her. The silence grew heavy. The judge spoke of risks, of dangerous names. Daniel nodded. He was already in. They agreed to meet at dawn with witnesses. Daniel left knowing that time was no longer on his side. He rode back with restrained urgency. Upon arrival, he found Maya standing at the door, the lantern trembling in her hands. She read the answer on his face before he spoke. Daniel explained the trick of the paper. Maya lowered her gaze. Then it's true, Daniel said firmly. It's a lie they want to make law, and there's a way to break it. He spoke of the marriage judge as a shield. Maya looked at him as if she didn't know whether to laugh or run. You don't know me, she said. Daniel replied that he knew enough. He knew what they had tried to do to her. He knew what would happen if she remained just a notation in a book. The silence between them shifted, less fear, more weight. Maya gripped the lantern. And after, what? Daniel softened his voice. After that, you decide whether to stay or go, but for now you need time. You need a name and the law on your side. Maya looked at the empty path. Then she repeated the words that had haunted her. You paid for me. Now do it. This time they sounded different, both a challenge and a plea at once. Daniel acknowledged with a slight nod. He turned toward the stable, and then heard the creak of the fence, the faint sound of leather moving. The ranch was no longer alone. Daniel closed the stable carefully and walked toward the fence as one inspects a post. He called Maya without turning and asked her to enter and close it. She obeyed, though she didn't want to. By the post stood a tall man, red scarf, easy smile. He said he came for something that shouldn't stay. Daniel watched him with calm calculation. The man spoke of ledgers and payments. Daniel replied that he had chosen the wrong ranch. The stranger stepped forward. Then Daniel moved quickly, precisely breaking the false confidence. The strike was clean. The man fell to the dust, more surprised than hurt. Daniel restrained him and tied him up. He wasn't seeking blood. He sought a message. Maya watched from the door, the old fear trying to return. Daniel told her she was safe. She asked how long it would last. Daniel looked at the bound man. Long enough. The man laughed, speaking of wars and big names. Daniel replied that the war began when they left a woman under a white blanket. Maya gripped the lantern tighter. At that moment, another horse breathed in the dust, approaching openly. Daniel knew before seeing it that this was only beginning, and this time the danger was coming to show itself head-on. The horse moved forward slowly until it was fully in view. There was no hurry in its step, no nervousness in its breath. Daniel recognized that kind of calm. It was the calm of men who rarely hear no. The rider dismounted easily, dust settling around his well-kept boots. He first looked at the man tied to the post, then at Daniel, and finally at Maya, as if inspecting a lost shipment. His smile was soft, practiced, dangerous. Daniel didn't need an introduction. Some men carried their name without saying it. This was one of them, and the ranch seemed to shrink. The man spoke in a calm voice, as one correcting a minor mistake. He said this should have been simple, that someone had complicated a delivery already paid for and recorded. Daniel stepped forward, not aggressively, but with finality. He replied that there was no pending delivery, no business, that this place was not a loading yard. The man sighed with false patience. He produced folded papers with exaggerated neatness. He said the books didn't lie, that the money had changed hands, and that settled any doubt. Daniel shook his head slowly. He said paper could say anything. Maya spoke from the doorway for the first time. She said he had married her. The word hung heavy. The man blinked once. Was that enough? He asked when Daniel replied that it was before a judge with witnesses, no longer a line in a book. The visitor's smile tightened. He said that didn't stop anything. Daniel replied that it did stop something important. He called her wife, not property, and the difference carried weight in the light. The man stepped closer. He said Daniel had just become a problem. Daniel replied that the problem started when they left a woman tied under a white blanket. The visitor looked at the tied man with disdain. He suggested letting him go. Daniel didn't move. The silence stretched like old rope. Maya felt her heart pounding in her ears. The man spoke of complaints, charges, of law dressed in authority. He said there would be papers waiting at dawn. Daniel listened without interrupting, as one who already knew the cost. He replied that they would leave before dawn, go straight to the chief judge, and bring living witnesses. The man laughed, but it no longer sounded confident. He mounted his horse with deliberate care. He said they were choosing the hard path. Daniel held his gaze. He replied that he always did. The rider left without looking back. When the dust settled, Maya leaned against the doorframe. Fear returned like deep exhaustion. Daniel approached slowly, not touching her until she allowed it. She asked if it was over. Daniel shook his head. He said it had only just begun, but also that they would not be alone or still. Movement was now their advantage. Daniel prepared provisions, water, blankets. He left the man tied, shadowed, and watched. A living witness was worth more than any written confession. Maya changed clothes in silence. The clean garments gave her back more than dignity. They gave her presence. When she stepped out, Daniel looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Not as a burden, but as a partner. As evening fell, they saddled the horses. Maya asked if she should stay. Daniel shook his head firmly. He said no one would decide for her again. Not now. Not ever. They rode with the sky-stained orange when Maya asked what would happen if everything went wrong. Daniel answered without hesitation. You'll still be my wife, until you choose otherwise. Maya nodded slowly. She didn't smile, but something settled in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel pushed, she felt held. Behind them, the ranch remained silent, as if keeping a secret. Ahead, the road opened toward a town that heard rumors before truths. In the middle of the night, Daniel noticed another shadow moving south. Someone else was riding urgently, not to catch up, but to get ahead. The race was already on. Maya felt it without him saying a word. She asked if the law would be waiting. Daniel replied that yes, but the truth would be too, and this time it wouldn't come alone. They continued riding under the stars, knowing that the dawn would bring not peace, but judgment. Yet together, for the first time, fear was behind them, not ahead. The arrival in Tucson happened with the sun falling behind them and the dust still clinging to their skin. Daniel felt the gazes before he heard them. The town seemed calm, but beneath that calm beat a dangerous curiosity. Maya held her back straight, though exhaustion trembled in her shoulders. She didn't lower her gaze. She had learned that doing so invited abuse. Daniel noticed the gesture and felt respect, not pity. The man tied up rode behind, secured to the saddle horn. His presence drew attention. A living witness always did. Daniel wanted everyone to understand that something was off. They didn't get far. A sheriff's deputy stepped from the shadows with a smile too polished. He said Daniel's name as if he had rehearsed it. This was not a casual encounter. He asked who the woman was. Maya clenched her jaw. Daniel answered firmly, "My wife." The deputy raised his eyebrows, amused, as if he had just heard a poorly told story. Maya spoke before Daniel could stop her. She confirmed the marriage. He asked, "Where and when?" The man pulled out a carefully folded telegram. He spoke of a missing woman and an accusation. Daniel felt the blow in his chest. The lie had arrived before they did. The deputy read slowly, savoring each word. Kidnapping, fraud, unlawful detention. The crowd began to gather. Daniel asked to see the message. The man held it, just out of reach. Maya noticed the change in Daniel's breathing. She knew this moment was a carefully set trap. Daniel pointed to the tied man. He said the answer was there. The deputy looked uncomfortable for the first time. This wasn't in his script. He asked what it meant. Maya stepped forward. She said that the man had come to take her as if she were merchandise. The word fell heavy. Some faces in the crowd shifted. The deputy moved too close to Maya. He asked if she had gone with Daniel willingly. Daniel didn't answer. He waited. It was her voice that mattered. Maya took a deep breath and spoke clearly. She told how they left her tied, covered, wounded. She told how Daniel cut the ropes and carried her in his arms without demanding anything. The murmurs grew. The deputy tried to twist her words. He spoke of pressure, of fear. Maya looked at him without lowering her head. She said the fear came from other men, not from Daniel. Daniel pulled out the certificate and held it up for everyone to see. He said it was signed and witnessed. The paper became more than ink. It became a challenge. The deputy didn't touch the document. He said everything would be clarified in the office. His hand moved toward his weapon. Daniel didn't move. The tension could be cut with a knife. More men appeared, too many, too fast. Maya felt danger closing in. Daniel leaned slightly toward her and gave a short whistle. She understood without looking back. Maya slipped through the crowd and disappeared into a nearby doorway. The deputy reacted too quickly. That gave him away. A man from the crowd stepped in. Questions began to rise. Why was she running if she was kidnapped? Why so eager to silence her? The crowd stopped being passive. Daniel felt the balance shift. The deputy lost his smile. He ordered the street cleared. No one moved. Daniel spoke without raising his voice. He said the truth didn't need to hide or run. From the doorway, Maya spoke firmly. She said she wouldn't go anywhere with those men, that she was no longer anyone's property. The silence was absolute. Daniel explained he would take her to the courthouse, not a cell, that the witness would speak before a judge, and that anyone opposing them would have to explain why they protected dangerous men. The deputy realized he was cornered by daylight and open eyes. He stepped back. Small, but enough. The crowd would not forget that. Hours later, night fell differently over Tucson. The words began to circulate. The dangerous name was no longer a whisper. Daniel and Maya left without running. On the way back, Maya held the reins with steady hands. Daniel looked at her and said that now she decided. Maya looked at the ranch in the distance and nodded. She chose to stay, not out of obligation, but by choice. And in that gesture, Daniel knew the true confrontation had not been with armed men, but with conquered fear. The return to the ranch was silent at first. The wind carried the dust, and the shadows of the cacti stretched like ghosts. Daniel felt his muscles tense, ready for any ambush, but Maya was by his side, steady and alert. The silence broke when Maya spoke. Her voice was low, trembling, only from emotion. She asked if Daniel always faced danger this way. He shook his head slightly, but his eyes did not lie. Protection wasn't a choice, it was instinct. Tired horses moved with a steady pace. Daniel kept hold of the reins and his attention on the terrain. Every out-of-place sound, every movement in the distance could signal a threat. Maya felt the tension, but also the security. They approached a small creek before reaching the ranch. Daniel stopped the horses and let them drink. Maya watched her reflection in the water and saw her own fear mixed with a spark of trust in him. When the horses finished, Daniel dismounted and held out his hand to Maya. For the first time, there were no orders, no urgency, just a gesture that seemed to say everything would be all right. Maya hesitated, then accepted the hand. The ranch appeared at dawn, with its worn fences and the barn showing the scars of time. Daniel dismounted first and helped Maya. Their hands brushed, and a silence heavy with unspoken words floated between them. Inside the ranch, Daniel checked every window and door. He didn't want surprises. Maya watched every movement, every careful gesture, every glance assessing the land. It reminded her that this man not only saved lives, but understood hers in a deep way. The man tied up, still in the shadow of the barn, murmured that he wouldn't understand what was coming. Daniel didn't respond, only adjusted the rope and made it clear there would be no escape for anyone who betrayed the justice of his ranch. Maya approached Daniel and lowered her voice. She asked who Silas Crow really was and what power he had over the people of Tucson. Daniel sighed, remembering days from his past when law and corruption danced together in every alley of the town. He explained that Crow controlled shipping routes, favors, and fear, men who never faced him directly. But Maya's arrival had changed everything. She not only disrupted plans but also awakened a sense of justice he could not ignore. Daniel led Maya to the kitchen and offered her a drink of warm water. The warmth of the cup contrasted with the chill of the early morning. Their fingers brushed lightly, and a faint blush appeared on Maya's cheeks. They sat near the fire, listening to the wind telling stories through the boards of the ranch. Daniel shared fragments of his life before Tucson, of loneliness, long days, and solitary nights where silence had become his only faithful companion. Maya, in turn, shared memories of her people, the land that had seen her grow and the fear she felt of men like Crow. Their words carried strength, but also a vulnerability Daniel deeply respected. As evening fell, Daniel decided they needed to plan. They couldn't wait for Crow to send his men again. Every move had to be measured, every decision made with precision. Maya listened attentively, learning to read risks and possible shelters. They decided that at dawn they would ride to a contact in Tucson who could provide information on Crow. The idea of returning to the city made Maya uneasy, but Daniel promised to always be by her side as shield and guide. That night, Daniel taught Maya how to handle a firearm safely. Their hands met as he positioned hers correctly. The physical contact caused an intense silence, full of tension and something sweeter, something neither of them mentioned. While practicing, a distant sound made them both stop. A horse was approaching on the trail. Daniel quickly scanned and saw it was a messenger with news from town. Maya's eyes widened in anticipation. The messenger, nervous, dropped an envelope into Daniel's hands. Inside were letters revealing Crow's movements and those of his accomplices. Every word was carefully written, showing that the threat was closer than they had thought. Daniel shared the information with Maya, explaining the network of deception and lies. She absorbed every detail, understanding they couldn't trust anyone else. Their eyes met, and in that instant, they knew they had to face it together. As night fell, Daniel prepared dinner while Maya helped. The firelight illuminated their faces, highlighting eyes full of determination. Between work and conversation, a silent bond began to form, blending trust with a nascent romance. Before sleeping, Daniel showed Maya the room she would use as shelter. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and safe. Maya watched as she settled in, feeling for the first time in a long while that someone genuinely cared for her well-being. They lay under thick blankets, with the horses resting near the barn. Maya thought of everything that had happened since Daniel rescued her. A warm feeling grew in her chest, a mix of gratitude, respect, and something deeper she still didn't dare name. Daniel closed his eyes but kept watch over the door. His mind went over plans, but he also remembered how contact with Maya made him feel alive again. For the first time in years, danger and excitement mingled with a quiet hope. The night wind whispered stories of desert and freedom. Daniel and Maya slept, half aware, knowing that dawn would bring crucial decisions. Yet between fear and uncertainty, a thread of romance began to weave their lives together. A promise of an unexpected future. Maya finally closed her eyes, trusting Daniel. Their hands rested nearby, barely touching. Barely. The adventure had only begun, and in that simple, meaningful contact, they understood that together they could face any storm the West could throw at them. Crow's hideout rose before them, hidden among rocks and shadows. Daniel and Maya advanced cautiously, feeling tension and adrenaline mix with a silent connection that made their hearts race. Each step toward the entrance was calculated. Daniel pointed out blind spots and safe routes to Maya. Their hands brushed while adjusting equipment, sending unexpected warmth through their bodies as they shared the closeness amid danger. The guards were numerous, but Daniel knew how to evade them. Maya watched carefully, learning each movement and every pattern of surveillance. Their courage combined, and the silent complicity grew almost as intense as the mission's tension. Once inside the perimeter, the dark hallways seemed endless. Daniel illuminated carefully, and Maya followed closely, her heart racing. Every shadow could be an enemy, but it also bore witness to the bond beginning to form between them. They approached the main hall where Crow was arguing with his men. Daniel indicated exits and possible obstacles, while Maya held her breath, realizing this moment could decide the fate of both of them and everyone who had suffered under Crow. Daniel made a silent signal, and Maya understood immediately. They moved as a perfect unit, dodging guards and obstacles with precision. Every accidental brush of hands or shoulders sent a shiver that they ignored to stay focused. Reaching the center of the hall, Daniel confronted Crow with firmness and authority. Maya stayed at his side, her gaze brave and defiant. The tension was sharp as a knife, and the atmosphere was charged with danger and restrained emotion. Crow tried to flee, but Daniel intercepted him. Maya supported Daniel, watching every possible escape route and ensuring no surprises. The strength of their determination outweighed any fear, and their connection seemed to give them extra courage. With Crow neutralized, Daniel secured evidence and key documents. Maya helped collect proof that would demonstrate the man's crimes. Their collaboration was seamless, and every gesture revealed an intimacy that had grown through missions, shared glances, and quiet moments. As they left the hideout, the sunset illuminated their faces. Daniel looked at Maya and saw courage and gratitude reflected in her eyes. The adventure had been dangerous, but it had also brought their souls closer in an unbreakable way. They mounted their horses again, moving toward a safe refuge. The fresh air brushed their faces, and each step together reinforced their sense of unity. The adventure had forged a bond beyond words and empty promises. At the camp, they lit a small fire. Daniel shared stories of his past, and Maya responded with tales of her people and travels. Intimacy grew, and the spark of romance they had restrained during the mission began to flare strongly. As night fell, Maya approached Daniel, and together they gazed at the stars. Each constellation seemed to tell stories of heroes and lovers, and in the shared silence, their hearts spoke without words. Daniel took Maya's hand with firmness and tenderness. Their eyes met, and there was a silent understanding. What they had faced together had created a bond that could not be broken, a tie forged in danger, trust, and true affection. At dawn, they prepared to return to the ranch. Every step together reinforced their complicity and mutual respect. The adventure was over, but the journey of their relationship was just beginning, with a future full of possibilities and promises. On the way back, Daniel and Maya shared stories of each challenge they faced along the way, laughing and recalling the most tense moments in detail. Past danger gave them strength, and their physical closeness began to feel natural and comforting. Daniel, guiding the horses, could not resist taking Maya's hand again. She smiled, accepting the gesture. The excitement of the adventure mingled with a delicate but intense, budding romance, impossible to ignore in their newly discovered intimacy. Upon reaching the ranch, Daniel and Maya were met with surprise and relief. News of their victory over Crow had arrived before them. People looked at Maya with respect and admiration, and Daniel felt proud to share that moment by her side. That night, they shared a meal by the fireplace. Conversation flowed between memories, laughter, and future plans. Physical closeness was inevitable, and the warmth of the fire mirrored the closeness they were beginning to accept with affection. Maya confessed her fears and dreams, and Daniel listened attentively, sharing his own vulnerability. Their sincerity strengthened their bond, and the romance arose not just from desire, but from deep respect and a connection that went beyond the physical. The moon lit the ranch as they walked across the fields. Their hands intertwined without words, and their steps echoed in the night's tranquility. Each shared moment confirmed that what they had was real, born from adventure, danger, and mutual trust. At the end of the night, Daniel and Maya sat under an ancient tree, gazing at the horizon. The feeling of triumph, a mix of fatigue and happiness, bound them together. They knew that no matter what came, they would face any challenge together as a team. Maya rested her head on Daniel's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. In the silence and calm of the night, they understood they had found something the West rarely offered: true love and unbreakable companionship. The adventure with Crow was behind them, but the story of Daniel and Maya was just beginning. The romance, courage, and complicity they had built together would become the foundation for a future full of challenges, victories, and shared moments of passion. As the first light of day illuminated the ranch, Daniel and Maya rose together, ready to face whatever the West had in store for them. Their hearts beat in sync, and the certainty of being together gave strength to every step they would take. The horizon stretched vast and promising before them. Daniel and Maya rode side by side, knowing they had conquered not only Crow, but also their fears, their doubts, and had finally found a love that would endure through adventures and challenges. Dawn colored the sky in shades of gold and orange. Daniel mounted his horse first, scanning the terrain with trained eyes. Maya followed, her deep breaths matching each step, ready to face whatever the city had in store for them. As they moved through the desert, Daniel recalled the maps he had marked in secret. Every path, every shortcut among the rocks and bushes served as protection. Maya listened carefully, learning to read the land and anticipate dangerous movements. The journey was silent, but full of tension. The sand kicked up by the horses' hooves seemed to mark a steady rhythm, like the pulse of a story just beginning to reveal its true danger and unexpected romance. Daniel explained how Crow kept his secrets hidden in seemingly empty houses and forgotten stables. Every place was a clue of power and control. Maya was amazed at how the man could unravel those mysteries with patience and cunning. When they reached the edge of a canyon, Daniel helped Maya off her horse. He pointed firmly to the trails they could take to avoid prying eyes. Their physical closeness was inevitable, and every brush sparked a silent heat they both tried to ignore. Maya admired Daniel's skill, guiding the horses over rocky terrain. Her trust in him grew with every step. Daniel, in turn, noticed the calm Maya maintained, a balance that made him feel less alone in his mission. They arrived at a small, deserted settlement where Daniel knew they would find a reliable informant. The place was filled with dusty buildings and faded signs, but the cowboy's experience allowed him to move safely. Always alert to every shadow around them, the informant turned out to be an older man, with lively eyes and deep wrinkles that told stories of hard years. Daniel discreetly handed over some coins, and the information about Crow's movements began to unfold in detail. Maya listened attentively, absorbing every name, every address, every warning sign. She knew this information would be crucial to protect not only their lives, but also the justice they sought to bring to the region. As they left the settlement, the wind picked up, carrying dust and dry leaves. Daniel and Maya shared a look that spoke of respect and complicity. a silent understanding their hearts began to recognize without words. On the open plain, Daniel stopped the horses and pointed to a valley in the distance. There lay Crow's hideout, hidden among rocky formations. Maya held her breath. The magnitude of the challenge they faced was clear and terrifying. They decided to approach cautiously, using shadows and bushes for cover. Every step was calculated, and every sound could give them away. Maya felt adrenaline surge through her veins, mixed with an emotion she had never felt before. Daniel taught Maya how to observe without being seen, how to interpret the signs left by Crow's men along their route. Their hands brushed while adjusting the binoculars, and both smiled at the inevitable closeness. They reached a creek near the hideout. Daniel suggested resting briefly and drinking water. Maya followed his example, noting how Daniel's attention never left her side. His vigilant gaze was both protective and surprisingly tender. As they replenished their strength, they heard the sound of approaching horses. Daniel took the initiative, hiding Maya among dense bushes. Crow's riders passed nearby, unaware they were being watched, and the tension grew with every heartbeat of Maya. After the men passed, Daniel explained the plan. Infiltrate the hideout at nightfall, avoid unnecessary confrontations, and gather evidence to weaken Crow. Maya nodded, understanding that her role was as crucial as his. The sun began to set, and Daniel indicated the best spot to camp before the mission. They prepared an improvised shelter among the rocks, careful not to leave traces. Their closeness forced them to share space, and their hands accidentally touched. Maya felt a shiver that wasn't from the wind. Daniel, aware, did not immediately withdraw his hand. There was something in that contact promising more than protection, something both began to recognize silently amid adrenaline and uncertainty. During the night, Daniel kept watch while Maya rested partially. Moonlight illuminated Daniel's determined face, and Maya realized this man faced not only enemies, but also his own heart. At midnight, a breeze brought the smell of smoke and roasted meat from the hideout. Daniel took note, evaluating routes and positions. Maya observed every gesture, every calculated movement. Her heart raced from danger, but also from the closeness they shared. They lay under a blanket of stars, whispering about their pasts and what awaited them. Daniel confessed fears he rarely shared, and Maya responded with stories of her people, creating a silent and deep bond. Dawn found them awake and prepared. Every action was synchronized, every glance calculated. Daniel and Maya understood that the adventure was not only against Crow, but also against their own fears. And together they felt stronger and more determined. They mounted their horses and advanced toward the hideout, aware that every step brought them closer to a confrontation that would define their lives. Tension, excitement, and a delicate emerging romance filled the air, mixing courage with silent desire. The hideout drew near slowly. Every rock and bush seemed to watch them. Daniel and Maya shared a brief look. Without words, they agreed to do whatever it took to survive and protect each other. Adventure and romance were intertwined in that crucial moment. With each heartbeat, tension mounted. Danger was tangible, but so was the connection between them. Daniel and Maya knew that no matter what happened, they would no longer be alone in the vast and wild west that had brought them together.